it on.
Okay, girls should be on.
Let's check in on what we've learned about this amazing Custer State Park so far. One thing for sure, Custer would have been a national park if the state hadn't nabbed it first. One of the largest state parks in the United States, Custer State Park encompasses a huge swath of land, in total covering 71,000 acres of the Black Hills, from prairie grassland to evergreen forest to granite peaks. Like the Needles Highway, which we're about to explore, Custer owes much of its formation to the early vision of the tireless Peter Norbeck, who first visited the Black Hills in 1905. This initial visit planted the seeds of conservation in Norbeck's mind, and when he became governor of South Dakota in 1917, he knew the time was ripe to act. Just 5 years prior, a portion of the land had been designated a game preserve, and in 1919, Norbeck addressed the state legislature with plans to expand the preserve and turn it into South Dakota's first state park. Part of that transformation included building the scenic byways, such as the Needles and Iron Mountain highways, as well as new lodges, campgrounds, and trails that were added by the Civilian Conservation Corps during the Great Depression. Up through the 1960s, the state continued to incorporate land into the park in order to make it more contiguous. In addition to its spectacular scenery, Custer State Park is also well known for its wildlife, especially in its southern reaches. Most famous is its herd of bison, which range from about 900 in the winter to 1,500 in summer. The original herd was reintroduced to the preserve in 1914 and consisted of just 36 animals. We'll be in the park until we reach Sylvan Lake. That marks the northwestern boundary.
Yeah, 1914.
1914, that's early.
Hold on to your hats, folks, because we're just about to start one wild ride. The Needles Highway consists of 14 miles of twisting, narrow roads, bringing us up close and personal with a wonderland of spindly rock spires and mica-studded granite domes. Along the way, we'll pass through 3 one-lane tunnels bored straight through the mountainside, the smallest of which is only 8 feet wide and 9 feet and 9 inches tall. Needless to say, if we're in an RV, make sure it'll fit through these tunnels and be able to navigate the sharp hairpin turns before we drive any farther. Also be aware that this road closes from mid-October through early April. As we drive along, you'll see plenty of places to pull over, admire the scenery, snap a few pictures, and even enjoy a picnic or snack. Anytime that you see a view you like, by all means, let's pull over and get that picture, even if it's not something that I've mentioned. If we packed a picnic or a snack, there's lots of scenic places to enjoy. The vision for this route came from South Dakota Governor and Senator Peter Norbeck, who proposed the highway in 1919 and insisted on providing access to the most scenic sections of the Black Hills. To lay out the route, Norbeck traveled through the Black Hills on horseback and on foot, surveying the land as he went. Although many told him it could not be done, Norbeck would not back down from his vision. With the help of his chief engineer, Scoville Johnson, and 150,000 pounds, we'll soon see the turnoff for the Black Hills Playhouse, surely one of the most obscure locations for drama in the world. Plays are staged between June and mid-August, a tradition that's been going strong since 1946. The theater is roughly a half mile from the turnoff and is an entertaining bonus for campers staying at the Center Lake campgrounds. It's such a great evening. You go to a show, then come back and roast marshmallows at your campfire.
I'd do it.
Closed for the season. Somehow we missed that. I'm sure we drove this way.
I don't think we got this far.
You don't think we drove
Yeah,
this
we
way?
came in someplace else. I don't know. Who knows?
Okay, I know you may have been wondering to yourself, are bison and buffalo the same thing? Well, yes and no. For a biologist, the bison and buffalo are separate animals. They share a common ancestor, but are categorized into different genuses. That is to say, buffalo live in Asia and Africa, while bison are native to the Americas and Eastern Europe. However, bison were commonly called buffalo by almost all early settlers in the Americas. Since most people had never seen one before, they mistakenly called it a buffalo, which was a more commonly known animal at the time. In fact, it wasn't until the mid-18th century that the taxonomist Carl Linnaeus first described the European bison, which at this time had almost been driven to extinction in Europe. So for the most part, throughout America's early history, bison were known as buffalo. While the name bison has become increasingly common in modern times, you'll still see the word buffalo used throughout the park. The trend towards conservation and preservation was part of a larger nationwide movement to protect the disappearing animals and ecosystems throughout North America, which were once considered inexhaustible by early European settlers. Two key figures in the conservation movement were a young Teddy Roosevelt and George Grinnell, founder of the Audubon Society. Both men were instrumental in convincing Congress to pass an 1894 law that protected all wildlife within national parks. Prior to the passing of this law, parks had no way to keep poachers at bay. But after 1894, parks were able to enlist the Army to help capture poachers and arrest them. After Roosevelt became president in 1901, he helped to establish 5 national parks, 18 national monuments, 4 game preserves, 51 bird reserves, and some 150 national forests. In all, he protected some 230 million acres of land for future generations. As he wrote upon establishing the Grand Canyon as a national monument in 1908, "Leave it as it is. You cannot improve on it. The ages have been at work on it, and man can only mar it."
So true. So true, Teddy.
We're coming up on the hole-in-the-wall picnic area. I've got to say, this is really a nice spot for a break. Lots of picnic tables, bathrooms, and Iron Creek running nearby. Just by the creek is a small alcove in the cliff face, which gives the site its name. It's large
we
enough that you
stopped
can
here.
actually walk inside.
I remember we stopped in here and walked over to the hole in the wall.
Yes, we did, because we came down. And we talked to those motorcycle guys.
When Custer State Park was first established in 1913 as a wildlife preserve, there were no bison here. Yet, not 50 years before, there were an estimated 50 million bison roaming the plains. By the end of the century, those millions had dropped to a mere 300 individuals total, and bison were on the verge of extinction. Where did they all go? Well, the reasons for their disappearance are numerous. Politics, fashion, transportation, and ranching all played a part in the widespread slaughter. One of the principal reasons that the bison were almost driven to extinction had to do with control of the land. The U.S. government was eager to continue its accumulation of territory in the American West, and so sanctioned the wholesale slaughter of bison in order to deprive Native Americans of a keystone species. Bison were more than just food for the Plains Indians. They were a way of life. They provided hides for shelter and clothing, bones for tools and toys, sinew for thread and bowstrings, horns for utensils, skulls for sacred iconography, and much more. The strategy was having no bison would make it easier to force Native Americans to live a farming lifestyle on reservations. Much of the slaughter of bison was undertaken by commercial hunters. Coats and hats made of bison fur were all the rage in the 1800s, and a hunter could fetch as much as $3 per hide, which was better pay than factory work at the time. Bison hides were used for various purposes, such as machine belts, while the tongues were salted and sold as a gourmet item. However, because the rest of the animal had no market value, millions of bison carcasses were simply left to rot on the plains after they were skinned. The meat wasn't even used. However, not all was totally wasted, as bone collectors would eventually enter the market as well, selling the bleached bones for fertilizer and other items. Another key factor in the mass slaughter of bison were the railroads. As you can imagine, millions of free-roaming bison, which commonly weighed 2,000 pounds, could be a major obstacle for keeping trains running on schedule. In order to solve this problem, train companies used to organize hunting by rail trips, during which passengers would fire indiscriminately out the windows of passenger trains, leaving thousands of carcasses in their wake. Cattle ranchers, too, were no fan of bison, as they were natural competitors for the same resources as their introduced cattle. Thankfully, a handful of ranchers also chose to raise bison, and this helped to save them from extinction. We're about to pass through Iron Creek Tunnel, one of 3 tunnels on the Needles Highway. Like the others, it's only wide enough for one car at a time to fit through. It's always a good idea to give a little honk if there's not already a line of cars in front of us.
Now we are going up. We never went through that tunnel.
I don't think we did.
I always remember going through
Looking out on this
Needles
landscape with
tunnel.
wild stone pinnacles, do you inexplicably feel the urge to climb to the summit of one? When we've stopped the car to take a photo, have you paused to run your hand over the side of a boulder, or scrambled up a slab of rock to get a better view, or maybe the perfect angle for a panoramic picture? If so, it might be that you have the soul of a rock climber hidden inside.
Yeah, right.
To the uninitiated, climbing might look pretty scary. Make that terrifying. But there's no denying its intrinsic primal appeal. Hopefully, if the weather is good by now, we've seen some climbers, as rock climbing is arguably the most popular sport in the Black Hills. But how does it all work exactly? Are climbers really safe? Or are they no better than high-risk thrill seekers? Well, the sport of climbing has come a long way since Fritz Weissner put up the first route back here in 1936. Equipment is so much better, and it certainly is much safer to climb today than ever before. But those early climbers weren't free soloing without ropes either. The same logic that they used to keep safe still exists today. At its most basic, climbing is a two-person game. One person climbs, the other belays. Belay means that they control the rope and catch the climber if he or she falls. Imagine you're climbing one of the needles. If you're the first person to climb, you are the leader. You climb up above your belayer and place protection to attach the rope to as you go. Originally, protection was a sort of metal spike called a piton that was hammered into the crack of a rock. A carabiner is attached to the piton and your rope is attached to the carabiner. If you were to fall, theoretically the piton would catch you. Today, however, lead climbers almost never use pitons. Instead, they might use what's called traditional protection, odd-shaped metal chalk stones that wedge into cracks, or more sophisticated camming devices. Or the person who established the route might have drilled bolts into the rock with power tools, in which case you simply need to attach the rope to the bolts with a pair of carabiners. Even easier. After the leader reaches a good place to set up an anchor, they stop climbing and belay the second person, or the follower, up the route. In this way, pitch by pitch, a pair of climbers can eventually reach the top of anything they can climb, and do so in relative safety. In order to get down from the top of a steep spire, you then need to rappel. This works by attaching the rope to a solid anchor at the halfway point, and then descending 2 strands of your rope using your belay device, which controls the speed that you slide down the rope by applying friction. Once you reach the end of the rope or a good ledge, you pull the rope down and repeat the process until you're on the ground. Really, it's all quite ingenious, isn't it? And pretty exciting, too. What do you say? Anybody ready to go rock climbing? No matter in what era people have been rock climbing, one thing has always held true. The sport is as mental as it is physical. Focus, control, and confidence are key. Yosemite climbing legend Tommy Caldwell once said, "Having confidence at the start of the climb often makes all the difference between success and failure." Essentially, he's saying that you can tell whether or not you'll be able to complete a tough climb before you even leave the ground. Many of the most famous climbing routes in the Black Hills were established by an East Coast couple, Herb and Jan Kahn, who knew a thing or two about mental composure. They first happened upon the Black Hills in 1947 while on a 5-year climbing trip across North America. Now back then, there were no special climbing ropes, harnesses, shoes, or sophisticated equipment. The Kahns would simply tie an 80-foot nylon rope around their waists and head up in their tennis shoes, taking old army pitons for protection. But as Jan once said, you can climb anything in the Needles if you have the guts. And indeed, many of the Kahn's routes continue to terrify climbers today. Jan and Herb fell so in love with the Black Hills that they bought a small piece of land here in 1949, where they built a stone house and lived off the grid for 60 years. And they put up over 200 first ascents. For work, Herb spent time as a high-altitude maintenance worker on Mount Rushmore, while Jan taught music. Herb often said that this time felt like being a cat at an untended fish market. With so few climbers in the area, they basically had all of the Needles to themselves. But the Kahn's love of adventure was soon to take them on a much larger project, the exploration of Jewel Cave. Beginning in 1959, the Kahn's spent the next 20 years underground, mapping over 60 labyrinth miles
Now he's
inside
talking
this
about Jewel
massive
Cave.
but then unknown cave.
Why didn't you talk about it when we were like there? we were going to do the big lookout
Yeah.
too.
Might do that tomorrow morning.
That was Norbeck Lookout, right?
Something like that. I'm just trying to do this whole. I'm trying to video this whole thing. See if it'll actually
Our
work.
next stop is the Cathedral Spires, an impressive cluster of some 75 granite spires that were the original inspiration behind Mount Rushmore. That's right, in 1923, state historian Doane Robinson had to stop not far from here after his Model T overheated while driving along the Needles Highway.
Beautiful.
While waiting for his son to return with water to cool down the car, Doane looked up and had a revelation. What if the spires in front of him were carved with the faces of Western legends like Kit Carson and Red Cloud? Now, if it were anyone other than Doane, they might have thought they were as overheated as the car and having hallucinations. Eventually, his son returned with the water and they got the car running again. But Doane didn't forget about his vision. When he returned to the state capitol, he proposed the idea to Senator Norbeck as a way to promote tourism in South Dakota. Robinson and others began to drum up support for the project, and 1 year later, sculptor Gutzon Borglum returned with Robinson to Cathedral Spires to see if his vision was realistic. However, in the meantime, a fair amount of opposition to the project had grown. The Sioux, who consider the area sacred, were of course opposed to the project, as were many residents of South Dakota who felt that creating a massive sculpture would destroy the natural beauty of the area. Ultimately, Borglum decided that there were too many large crystals in the Needles granite to make it suitable for carving. So the pair continued to scout for a suitable location further away before eventually settling on Mount Rushmore, where they changed the nature of the project to focus on presidential figures rather than Western icons. Now, if you have the energy, the spires make for a fabulous hike. It's only 2.3 miles round trip to the spires,
We did it.
but it is strenuous. 500 feet of elevation gain, and you should expect to do some scrambling. If you're interested in doing this hike, you'll see an obvious parking area with painted lines on a tight left turning hairpin about a
did it
minute
there.
ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're happy enough to just enjoy the great views from the roadside overlooks, we can continue and you'll see several opportunities to enjoy the granite along the way.
Yeah, we parked right over here. I'm pretty sure. Maybe not. Maybe.
No, we did not.
Yeah, it's just so beautiful.
Should be coming to another tunnel, I thought. This is where we parked right here. Parked up on top.
Yeah, we're going the opposite
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, we parked on top.
Yeah.
Yep, we've seen all this. This place is jam-packed.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went right through there.
Yeah. Yeah, we parked over here.
K-Man.
crowded,
Yeah, it is.
but it's way cool.
It is way cool. It's just gorgeous here.
It's just way cool shit.
We're now approaching one of the highlights of the Needles Highway, the Needles Eye. But as we approach, we'll drive close by and through some other pretty cool formations and views, so we really should make a few stops wherever you see a view that catches your attention. The spectacular Needles Eye Formation rises up like a rocket ship, accentuated by a detached fin on its side, which forms a gap that you can see through. This is the famous eye. The needles are made up of granite, which is a type of rock formed when magma underground is slowly pushed upwards, gradually cooling off as it goes. This process often results in large crystals made up of shiny mica, feldspar, or quartz. This durable granite comprises the core of the Black Hills, and the thin spires are roughly representative of the locations of the original magma uplifts. Essentially, all that's left after the softer surrounding rock eroded away. Some of the rock here is estimated to be about 2 billion years old. Some of the oldest exposed rock in North America. The Needles Eye has a small parking area located on the other side of the improbably narrowed Needles Tunnel. This is a fantastic place to get out and explore. Now, it may be a little bit hard to find a spot if there's lots of traffic. On this side of the tunnel, you may be able to find a space on the side of the road, although it is a longer walk, or roll the dice and try for a space after passing through the tunnel. If you're lucky, you might look up to see a rock climber ascending this magnificent formation. All right, get those cameras and phones ready.
I don't think I ever saw the Needles Eye. This is the tunnel. There's a Needles Eye.
Yeah, I don't know.
rock
Yeah, I don't know where that is.
that he's talking about. I don't know where he said to look. Oh, that's it right there, I bet.
Yeah. Did you want to explore? Or not? We come back tomorrow. Do what?
It's real narrow.
Just cool.
Yeah,
Way cool.
it's very
Not too long from now, we'll be at Sylvan Lake. That marks the state park boundary. There are two particularly worthwhile places of interest here if you'd like to get out of the car and stretch your legs. The first is Sylvan Lake. The second is the trailhead for Black Elk Peak, also known as Harney Peak. Sylvan Lake was actually created in 1883 by the Reeders, a local family who built a dam in an attempt to drum up customers for their nearby lodge. Well, as you'll soon see, the lake is certainly a beautiful spot, and relatively gentle hike to circuit the water is very enjoyable. On the far side of the lake is South Dakota's highest point, Black Elk Peak, measuring in with an elevation of 7,424 feet. Black Elk Peak is also considered to be the highest point in the United States. Highest point east of the Rocky Mountains, that is. At the top of the peak is an old stone fire lookout tower, which was built by the Civilian Conservation Corps in the 1930s. When the Black Hills were first formed 65 million years ago, their elevation actually reached as high as 14,000 feet. But the top layer of sedimentary rock has since eroded away, revealing the granite outcrops that we see today. You can hike up to the summit from a trailhead next to the lake on a 7-mile round-trip trail, which will gain over 1,000 feet of elevation. This route has the rather prosaic name of Trail Number 9. Sounds idyllic, doesn't it? Well, it is, though. Trail Number 4 also leaves from here, and it accesses Little Devil's Tower and the Cathedral Spires, though there are shorter options for hiking to both.